All right, welcome everyone. I think this is the second edition of the Package Group Office Hour, and we're excited to do this during the hackathon. So I guess without further ado, I mean, Tim, I think I'll just turn things over to you, and then, I mean, feel free to share the screen and we can start the conversation.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining. And today I really wanted to talk about a few things, just a quick overview of what we're working on now. So I'm going to pull up and share my screen and review the direction page. From there, I have an open issue for the hackathon actually for potential community contributions that range from auth issues to contributing new package managers to smaller updates. And then I was planning on going over some recently released features that we have, so it might spark some interest in ways to continue to iterate on the GitLab product. And then Nico was actually going to give a short demo of a new feature that we're working on in 12 that will come out in the upcoming milestone and that we'll continue to iterate on moving forward as well. So without further ado, I'll share my screen. Okay. And everyone can see that, right? Okay, so where I'm at right now, this is every stage at GitLab has a specific section and stage direction page. And ours is under because package falls under CI/CD, ours is under the CI/CD section, and then the package stage. I do think it's important to overall state what our goal is for the package stage. And for us, our goal is to build a set of features that within 3 years will allow our customers, or at least 90% of them, to store all of their packages and images on GitLab, removing the need to have any external third-party vendor. We want to be a single application for all of the package and container needs. And so we have in order to accomplish that goal, we need to unify the container and package registry to create a seamless experience for building, testing, and releasing code. But a big part of that is actually driving community contributions, whether that's from our customers or whether that's from the community. We need to make, we have a really aggressive roadmap and timeline. And so it's really important that we work with the community to make sure that our product that people can contribute and that they want to contribute and that they feel like what they're doing is valuable. And then, of course, we need to improve performance and reliability of builds by reducing reliance on external dependencies. So that speaks to an initiative, the category for the dependency proxy, which I'll talk a little bit more about when we get to some ideas for contribution. Okay, so these are our major categories as part of our stage. We have the package registry, and this is really the different package manager formats that we support. Currently, we have support for NPM, Conan, Maven, and coming soon is NuGet, and thanks to Joshin, Composer, which is a big community contribution that we're close to getting through. What we're working on now is a combination of adding new package managers. So we're working on adding, like we mentioned, NuGet and PHP. Next on the list for things that we'd like to add is Python. So we're actually just starting to do the investigation work on PyPI as the package manager for Python. Another highly requested feature, and it's something that we don't really support yet, is any Linux distribution. So Debian and RPM is a big focus that we want to add, probably in Q2 of 2020, we'll start to shift our focus to Debian and RPM. And then for obvious reasons at GitLab, since we are a Ruby shop, it would be really valuable for us to support Ruby gems for dogfooding purposes, but also Ruby's a popular language, so we want to support that as well. There are in the documentation, you could see a list of suggested contributions for other package managers, but these are our top priorities. Some other things that we're working on is, one I kind of called the big thing for the package registry is NuGet and Python, or the PyPI, which is next. Okay, let me go to the container registry. Couple of highlights for the container registry that we're working on now. The biggest thing we're working on is lowering the cost of storage on behalf of our customers first, and then on behalf of GitLab second. So one of the problems with the Docker container registry is how garbage collection works. It's pretty slow. The open source Docker project hasn't been updated in quite a bit. So we're actually now at GitLab, we are making updates to that project. And we are first optimizing how garbage collection runs. So this includes how the algorithm marks and deletes images and blobs. And then separately from that, we're also, after that, we'll be working on online garbage collection, because the current system requires the registry being set to read-only or down mode, which for GitLab.com, that's impossible. We can't set the container registry to down mode or to read-only mode for an extended amount of time. But separately, we're also attacking the problem from, how do we help administrators programmatically manage their container registry? And that was one way that we're doing this is by enabling Docker tag expiration and retention policies. And this is something that Nico's going to give us a quick demo in a few minutes on, but I think it's worth just calling out. The big thing we're working on the container registry right now is lowering the cost of the storage and giving tools to administrators to programmatically manage storage costs. And then the other category I want to specifically call out is the dependency proxy. This is a feature that was actually, the MVC was launched a few milestones ago. It's not been broadly adopted yet because it's dependent on using the Puma web servers, and GitLab.com uses Unicorn, for instance. So I know the infrastructure team is working on rolling out Puma to production. One thing that we're considering is switching the logic to use Workhorse, which is another type of upload system that we have. But there are a couple of really important features that we would like to add for the dependency proxy. So one is adding authentication so we can enable using it with private projects. This is a great idea for a community contribution. And the other one is the ability to delete items from the dependency proxy or just purge it, because you could imagine we don't want to get into the same boat we are with the container registry, where we see ballooning storage costs and not have a good answer for cleaning those up. Okay, so I think I'll pause there on the direction updates. Did anybody have any questions on that, or I think maybe we could switch to Nico quick for a quick demo, and then I could dive into some potential options for community contributions after that. Okay. Nico, I'll stop sharing if you want to do a quick demo.
Yeah, I'll screen share. Clearly, the expiration policy is something that run on a temporal basis, so we won't see it running in action. We can check the UI though. First of all, I want to clarify that this piece of UI, this feature for now is not enabled for older project. So project created before the expiration policy is released. This is to avoid like accidental deletion of tons of tags from projects that have a lot of tags and images. But let's take a look at the UI. There is a new section in settings CI/CD. And it's this little form that allows you to set up several rules to retain and expire tags. The form comes pre-compiled with some sensible default. This is actually a project that I'm working on, so it changes, a little bit changed. The minimum that you can select is like 7 days. This means that tags older than 7 days can be expired. When it should run, how many tags should we retain for every image from 1 to 100. And then this is a regular expression that is going to match the project name. There is the ability to save and turn it off if it's not necessary anymore. As I said, I can't really show it in working because at least 7 days needs to pass for a tag, or actually it needs to run. It runs, I think, every midnight, around midnight. So there is not more to show, but we do have an extended documentation about this. And we actually explain all the steps that the algorithm is going to take. I think you can already find this on gitlab.com. Clearly, the feature is not available before 12.8. It's is out. Any questions?
Is there also a way that you can update this outside of the UI? Like, can you use the GitLab API to do this?
Yes, absolutely. We have documented to basic usage here, and more documentation can be found here. So this falls under the project edit API, and there is a new dictionary to pass, a new hash, and we are allowed to set the same setting as you can see through the UI.
What's next for this?
I guess the next step is going to be on the project level, but you can confirm that probably on the repository level. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, thinking about people here that might want to contribute. Is there any interesting pieces of this that you could think, oh, this could be a good avenue for people to contribute to this code, mm-hmm. or maybe something you've learned?
There is one, we made some assumption in the UI specifically that we will go with sensible default and dropdown, but these are all things that can actually change and become more rich selector. Most of those can be combined, date range selector, or you can end up to pick up a time or this kind of improvement. And this is all stuff that we can work on from now. This is regarding UI. Maybe regarding the API and the backend, somebody else can chime in, or if not, like Steve, maybe, has some ideas.
Yeah, I think along that same level of just more customization and sort of the options that are available are sort of some easier ways to approach this as some small improvements that can be made right away, and from there, like Nico was saying, our next step is going to be taking a look at this not from the project level but from the repository level, so one a little bit more granular view. And I think there'll be a lot of opportunities there to also just be able to increase some small pieces of functionality in some ways that might be really helpful.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve and Nico. That was really helpful. I will share my screen again, and I put together this issue as per Ray's recommendation. It's something that the runner team is doing, and I was definitely interested in it. I created sort of a meta issue that just details when are we having open office hours, and by the way, we should probably create a new one of these for next month because we're trying to do these monthly and get in front of the community more often. And then I just added a bunch of comments in different threads for potential contributions. So the first one is, these are bigger projects. So this is something similar to, here we highlight Composer, which Joshin's been working on, and I'd love to hear how that's been going, and if you're willing to share any lessons that you've learned, and that would be really helpful. But I kind of highlighted the top 5 that we're looking for contributions right now. And then also, unfortunately, the person that's working on the cargo MR and Terraform are I don't think that they're here right now, but these are in motion as well. Justin, do you feel like saying anything about the Composer contribution you've been working on?
Well, currently it looks pretty good. So Gigi did a few tests yesterday, I think. It's been looking good so far. So the only issue he's having at the moment is Composer creates packages by tags. So he was trying to set up a new branch and building a new package from there. So, and that didn't work for him. But basically that worked only for the master branch. So we have to look into that. But I think so far Composer is doing, or looks pretty much done at the moment. So that's a big step forward, I think.
Yeah, so it's in
Yeah.
maintainer review and just going through some final testing, it sounds like.
Yeah. And well, there's maybe a thing for the instance entry point at the moment. We're currently, or Gigi decided to basically disable the instance entry point for Composer because it would pull in all existing packages. So it's kind of like a performance issue. So I did a bit of an investigation yesterday to see how we can get around this. So we can enable this feature for GitLab.com. But for now, he's like, he said he will only add a checkbox for enabling the instance entry point for like the enterprise version and not for GitLab.com. So GitLab.com will not have an instance entry point. That's the plan for now. So, but we're working on that later on once it is released. Yeah.
That makes sense. Do you have any suggestions for those watching at home for getting started on a contribution like this, and any learnings or best practices that you picked up along the way?
Along the way, well, I would basically, when I started, there was Maven and I think NPM. So I should have talked more to like the creators of that feature. So, and basically just focus on reading the docs. Reading it once, reading it twice, wait, settle down for a week and read it again. Because I think I made a lot of mistakes on the way just by fiddling around and not reading the docs properly as I was supposed to. So yeah.
That makes sense. And I think we learned, you know, this being one of our first contributions of this type of, like a new package manager, I think we learned as a team what it means to support those community contributions, and, you know, having GG be available for support and, you know, being able to help guide those through has been, I think has been really helpful. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, it's really helpful. And I think it was Mayra doing like the review every now and then, and she's always been like big help. Everyone was just trying to help as much as he could. So, but in general, I think I should have been like more verbose on, or just like talking more, so people start to listen more, because I tended to be like really quiet when I was programming and try to get the feature to a certain stage. And then I came up with saying like, can someone please review? So people started like to look at this, and when I just kept on pushing like changes like each and every day, so let everyone know early what I'm doing at the moment. So that would make, to me, would have made things like easier for me, I think. So everyone can like just be nice and tell me what I'm doing already wrong, so I don't finish like the wrong writing of the code. So that saves me time and maybe gets the feature done early and not as late as what happened to Composer now. So yeah.
Josh and Dan Croft,
Hey.
engineering manager. Nice to put a name to a face, and thank you so much for all the work you've done and contributed. It's pretty awesome to see you giving your own time to sort of contribute here. And I know that this MR has been open for a while, and you have put a lot of energy into it. It's really, really appreciated. As a group, I certainly want to try to engage and assist the community wherever we possibly can. And so I'm always interested in feedback if we could be doing a better job with that. We've been iterating internally on how we engage the community to try to make sure that we're providing the support necessary for people without trying to take things over or take it out of someone's hands, or we're trying to avoid a situation where someone feels like they're not able to own that change that they've created and really feel like they're part of the solution that ends up being made for the sort of particular feature set. I'm always keen to hear feedback if we can do it better. And in our case, what we've done is we've updated our on our handbook page for the package group. We've sort of updated and in an ongoing fashion been updating how we engage the community, and that's now inclusive of like anything up to like actually taking over the MR in cases where the community member feels like they're not able to contribute or they would like that level of assistance. But it can be really tricky for people because we're really just trying to help. So anytime you have feedback for us, please let us know. I'm more than happy to iterate on how we do this and what works for different people in different circumstances. I don't know if that issue that Tim has shared makes sense, the office hours issue, but if you want to contribute there, I'll put it there, it'd be awesome. We also have an issue describing our experience, learning how to implement package managers for ourselves. And that's sort of started by Steve and contributed to by David and other members of the team. And this could be really helpful to have your feedback in there as well. And just to say again, I'll stop my ranting, but like, just so, thank you so much. Like, we recognize that this is like passion project for people, and it's super awesome to see that from the community. It's really exciting for me. I don't want to speak for other people, but it's really, really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I also want to echo. I mean, this MR has been going on for a while, and it's amazing, Johan, that you kind of kept at it. And then, I think part of the challenge is I mean, Daniel and Tim, you've been here for a while, but you guys had a pretty lean team for a long time, right? I mean, it's great to see other like engineers on the package team. So we had people like Myra like sort of helping out. So I'm sure that didn't help, but. Yeah, I mean that's sort of the reason why we wanted to do these like office hours, right? So I mean, for new teams like the package team can better support community members and have community members be part of the conversation. So just echoing what people have already said about the work that's already been happening.
Great. Thanks for that. That was really helpful. There is a list of suggested contributions that kind of a more full list than what I included in the issue. So if you're interested in any of these other ones, like CRAN, for instance, for any of our data scientists out there, Puppet is something that I've been hearing a bit of interest from the community on recently. So if you're interested in this list is available in our documentation. You could just Google for packages and suggested contributions. Okay, so the next section that I have is all about permissions and access and deploy tokens. These issues are really interesting if you're interested to see how GitLab handles permissions and auth. I think Steve is on the call. He's worked through a lot of these issues since he's been here since May. He's gotten to work through probably some type of example of all of these issues. And we see a lot of customer requests for this. Some highlights on here are having, how do deploy tokens work? So basically having read-only access to the packages API. Right now, deploy tokens are limited to reading the code repository or reading the container registry. They don't have access to the package registry. And so for a lot of people, they want deploy tokens for the packages. Adding write registry permission to deploy tokens, and this could probably be expanded to say write container registry and write package registry. Having global deploy tokens, issues where private tokens with working with the container registry. And then another thing is, as we add support for each package manager, or fast follow to whenever those issues are released, are ensuring that the CI job token is enabled to work with that specific feature. So for instance, we're about to launch NuGet, and I think it'll be available on .com in the next couple of days. The next thing we'll want to do after that is make sure that the job token works with that. So yeah, oops, I have 2 repeats on here. But Steve, did you want to say anything about working with the auth and tokens, about anything that was particularly interesting or exciting that you learned about when you worked on those features?
Yeah, I think working in the auth section and permission section of the code is really interesting because like with a lot of these changes, oftentimes the changes aren't that big, but the code, the underlying code is probably some of the more complicated code that I've run into at GitLab, just because authentication and authorization tends to be a little bit more complex. So it is a lot of fun to kind of explore and see how it's currently working, and sort of it's almost like a little bit of a detective work on finding like where does this change need to happen, and then once it all clicks, it's kind of a little bit easier to make the change and test it out. So it is a very different area of code versus, you know, creating a new package manager or creating a new feature for container registry. So if that's a little bit more of the style that some people are interested in, where they just like to kind of go exploring and understanding existing code and not necessarily starting completely from scratch, it's a really fun area to get some of that sort of exposure.
Cool. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I've following along those issues. It's been fun to see the different use cases that have popped up and different considerations that come into play when you're editing this code, because it touches so many different pieces.
And along with that, you do end up getting to also interact with the security team and a few of the other different areas in GitLab, which can be really like informative and pretty fun.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so the next one is, I've noticed for me, is has been a great way to contribute to GitLab, but not being a developer, is being able to try and help improving the documentation. Something I consistently hear from users and from our customers. They love GitLab. Actually, this is a quote from a recent customer meeting. "I love GitLab. I don't love your documentation." So this is an area that we can always improve on, and that includes doing things like creating templates, or if you have a use case that is important for you, or that's working for you, like add a template for it or add it to the documentation. We see a lot of these contributions come through, and they're really helpful. I put in some examples here for having some Docker templates. One thing that I see a consistent number of issues for is, how do we support private registries and what documentation exists for that? That would be a great community contribution. But yeah, if you're a first-time contributor and looking for a way to contribute to GitLab, I think improving the documentation is a great way to start. And certainly, it's a good way to get your feet wet without having to even change any code.
And to build a little bit on that, if you're kind of worried that, you know, like maybe you want to make the documentation better by adding some content, but you're not really confident in how to properly word it or organize it with the rest of the documentation, I wouldn't worry about that. I would create the merge request, and then one of the technical writers at GitLab will be like super happy to help figure out how to actually bring the right voice to it and get it into our documentation in that way.
Yeah,
one of the things I've seen projects do to encourage or to enable people who are coming in from the outside of the project is they have labels or tags for issues that are basically like, you know, this is relatively simple. You don't need a lot of context to actually be able to do this successfully. I hear it's low-hanging fruit is a common one, or something of that nature, where it's just like, you know, you don't have to understand the entire system to make the change effectively. So I wonder if that's something we could explore, just to and advertise like, hey, this is a good way to contribute. You're not going to spend weeks spinning up.
I think that would be really helpful, for at least for me. Ray, do we have any label like that
Yeah,
we currently use?
a good label is like a good for first-time contributors. So that label is certainly applicable here. And then the only ask that I have is, I mean, if you create an issue with that label, you know, it'll be great if you can sort of be available as a resource for you know, helping community members sort of get over the first hump. Because I mean, I think the first MR is usually the trickiest one, because you're learning the processes and learning the tools. So if you can sort of, you know, when you add the label, just volunteer and say, look, if anyone wants to work on it, I'll be happy to, you know, help you and work with you. So, I mean, I think that would be a good label to start with, but let me know if that, yeah, if that helps.
Okay, I like that
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit label. I wonder,
Yeah.
any objections to using that? Because it maybe it's like a little bit more than a first-time contribution, which would, but it's at the same time it's not as involved. You're not going to spend, an extremely
Right.
long amount of time on it.
Yeah. Or, I mean, the other thing I ask people to do is when they search for issues, like look at weights. I mean, not everybody assigns a weight to an issue that people create, but I mean, added issue like a weight of like a 1 or 2. That's usually a good sign that it's not going to take an enormous amount of work to sort of get started.
That's helpful
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue maybe with doing it just by the weight is I've weighted an issue 1 or 2, but with the context of like knowing how to test and verify that and knowing the container registry, it's in that context.
Right.
It would be a lot higher for someone who hasn't gone through and knows how to verify the change is correct.
Yeah, I mean I think in general that's a challenge with weights, right? It's somewhat subjective, and then I mean, you need to factor in the context as well. But
Okay, we could,
yeah,
I'll take that as an action item to, one, at least put first-time contribution on items that could be easier, and then two, consider maybe adding another label that would be something like low-hanging fruit or something like that.
yeah.
Kelly, if you have any example projects where you've seen that and can call that out, that would be really helpful to share. Okay, so the next category is Jupyter Notebooks. So this is, if you're not familiar, Jupyter Notebooks are, they're IPython notebooks where you can run code in cells. It's common use cases are for data scientists for doing data exploration and analysis. The advantage is that you can have one cell that's written in SQL, and then you could switch to Python or Scala in the next cell. It's also, I'm hearing a lot recently of people using them as runbooks. So being able to specify specifically like how a release is done. And there's a bunch of, I shouldn't say, there's a bunch of issues with how items are rendered within the Jupyter Notebook. So you can see here that images are not being displayed, or Markdown is not being displayed correctly. If you're interested in Jupyter Notebooks, this is a great way to contribute, because it seems like these all work within the Jupyter project. Normally, it's just not working within GitLab. So these could be cases where there's a fairly straightforward solution. And again, a great way to contribute if you're a user of Python notebooks and want to contribute to GitLab. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is just the package registry user interface. So, if you want to contribute to that, there's one example is being able to add a package to a project from the UI. And there's an issue here that kind of goes over that. But also, if you're a user of the feature and you're going and you see anything that can be improved, I think, just starting a contribution is really useful. And actually, a lot of our front end improvements, and we've made a lot of them in the past 7 or 8 months since Nick and Nico joined, have been them basically saying, I would like it to work this way. Like as an NPM or Maven user, I really want to have this functionality. And then just creating the issues and working on it. So it's been really useful. Okay, a couple more. So I mentioned the dependency proxy a little bit earlier. This is a pretty aggressive one, but if you're in the mood for having a big contribution that touches Workhorse, which is the way that GitLab will do file uploads, updating the dependency proxy to use Workhorse is probably a big contribution, but something that would definitely be valuable and would help get this feature out sooner. And then adding authentication support so we can extend the feature to work with private projects. And then, like I mentioned, adding the ability to delete and purge items from the dependency proxy. And then there's just a couple of other general improvements that I've added here. Extending package JSON links to work with the package registry, and allowing publish to group for the Maven endpoint. And then this is a similar thing. You could do the same thing for Conan or NuGet. You could basically extend to the pull or publish rules to either the group or instance. And we have different use cases that we could follow up on that. Okay, I have one more thing to share, just to talk a little bit about some things that we've done or that are coming soon or that have been done in the past couple of months that are worth highlighting. So in 12.8, we have a bunch of new features that are coming out. Actually, I should start with, let's see here. So I mentioned the NuGet repository. This is awesome. This is our most highly requested, most upvoted feature for our stage. It has over 150 upvotes. We have improved performance for the garbage collection algorithm for S3, and we're seeing orders of magnitude improvement. We're seeing it was for deleting 15,000 blobs, it was taking 2 hours, and now it's taking like 93 seconds. So it's some great improvements that are coming soon. Nico demonstrated the expiration policies. That is will likely, if not hopefully, make 12.8. I know this is in maintainer review now. We have improved performance of the delete API for the container registry front end. So in terms of front end performance, this has been one of the most poorly performing controllers on GitLab, and it's resulted in a lot of support issues. And so this will be really valuable for our team to get these out. And this is actually available in production now, where you can add package metadata to the UI. So if you build an NPM or Maven or Conan package using CI, you could visualize, or it'll show you which pipeline, which branch, and which commit was responsible for it in the package details page. And then a couple of other things. So I believe this is out and available now on .com and will be in 12.8, but we resolved an issue with the garbage collection for DigitalOcean on S3. This was an issue for instances that were using Ceph storage. We added support for NPM tags, so you can now use the NPM dist tag to add tags to packages, and that's available now on .com. I'm really excited about this one, this delete corrupted manifest. A common thing that happens in Docker is the manifest will get corrupted, and we have seen many issues opened up where people have tried to run garbage collection and then it fails because of these corrupted manifests. So this improvement will actually ignore them, or it'll delete the corrupted manifest as part of the garbage collection. So it will no longer error out the garbage collection when it fails. And a couple of other things just maybe worth calling out. We talked about using CI job tokens, so we made that work with the Conan repository. We released the Conan repository. And then also we've been improving the user interface by doing things like adding snippets to install the package. And then overall improving sorting and filtering for the package registry as well. Okay, that feels like a lot of just talking, so I'm going to stop there. And I should say, do we have any questions or comments?
You know, I see a couple of other familiar community members like Mateus, Brian, and others. If you have any questions, I mean, feel free to jump in, or you can even type them on the chat window if you don't want to verbalize it.
One thing I guess I'll just say is, you know, if you're thinking about contributing, and you know, I think that's just, we are here to support you. You know, it's a little intimidating at first to say, you know, to look at the documentation on how to contribute, but you know, we are here to support. So I think that we can get through there.
Yeah, there was a question from Brian, I guess. Yeah, Tim, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, Brian's saying, what are some good issues to get started with? It depends what you're interested in. If you're looking for small issues to get started with, I think some of those auth issues and like the token stuff is good because it gives you a really good sense of how to contribute to GitLab. There's a lot of examples you could pull from, and it'll definitely get a lot of feedback from us and from the security team as well. But maybe, does anyone on any of our developers have any ideas for good first contributions? I think that like iterating on the API is also a great way to get started, because it's like if you're a front end developer, I guess it's a different probably be a different answer. But if you're a back end and you want to contribute to the API, it's a pretty good way to do it, to just like add a different endpoint or expand the functionality. And like Ray just linked to the issue that it has a bunch of different options for things you can contribute.
Thanks. I'll be sure to check out maybe the deploy tokens issue. It seems to have a lot of popularity and maybe something that could be a great start. Thanks.
Thanks.
And if there's anything that you're not sure about, whether or not it is like something that'll be easy to get started on, or seems a little confusing, feel free to ping anyone, Tim, any one of the developers on the package team, or just give it a package label, and one of us would be happy to just sort of start a discussion and talk through what might be involved, and help out as much or as little as you'd like, really.
Thanks.
All right, I think, Ray, what do you think? Should we call it? We're about
Yeah,
40
I
minutes in.
you have 9 minutes left, but if there are no other questions, I mean, if for people that are watching the recording, I mean, if you have any questions, I mean, I would encourage you to just add questions or comments directly on the issue that we have for the office hour. And then I think the other thing you already mentioned, we'll try to schedule this like once a month. So hopefully, few weeks before, whenever we have this call in March, we can open another issue and start a conversation there. So.
Great. Yeah, next month I think we'll be demoing the Composer integration, hopefully.
There you go. Cool.
Well, thanks everyone for joining. This was really great, and look forward to keeping the conversation going in the issues and in merge requests.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Cheers.